Yeah, the world's largest Bitcoin exchange will be included in the S&P 500, breaking into a $47 trillion market. But why now? Coinbase just acquired one of the biggest derivative exchanges literally this week in a huge $2.5 billion acquisition. Why is Coinbase buying one of the largest paper Bitcoin exchanges at the same time that the number of Bitcoin held on the Coinbase exchange is dropping like a rock? Is Coinbase being welcomed by Wall Street with open arms, or is there something deeper going on here? The acquisition now allowing Coinbase to potentially suppress the Bitcoin price through the paper Bitcoin market? Before we get into the speculation, let's cover the breaking news of Coinbase joining the S&P 500. So we have tons to unpack. A couple things. First, paper Bitcoin and the significance of a massive Bitcoin, and to be fair, altcoin exchange joining the S&P 500, and by doing so, once again, aligning incentives. Joining me on the show today, I have my legendary co-host who's always optimistic, Optimus Fields, and of course, we have the CEO of Sazmining. They make Bitcoin mining incredibly easy. We have Kent in the house joining us today. All right, everybody, no more delay. Let's jump straight into today's headline. So what are we talking about? We're talking about Coinbase and the significance of it. And I get it. We're a Bitcoin maxi show. A lot of you guys are like, yo, I don't use Coinbase. I mine those wild sats. What are we talking about? Or, I purchased my Bitcoin on a Bitcoin only exchange. Well, the significance of this, very simple. The fact that Coinbase is joining the S&P 500, all those people that have retirement accounts, 401ks, and they buy index funds, right? Now, all of a sudden, they're going to have exposure to Bitcoin one way or the other, or the Bitcoin ecosystem, which I find really, really interesting. Another thing also to take into account is the ads that Coinbase has been dropping. They dropped an ad during the NBA Finals, essentially criticizing fiat money. It's basically saying there's an infinite amount of dollars that were printed. There's only 21 million Bitcoin. Here's one of their latest ads. Let's check it out.
Every day, the Fed prints an average of $465 million. That's 26,000 shipping containers a year, created out of thin air. Maybe that's why the dollar loses value over time. But there's one thing they can never print more of: Bitcoin. At the size of a quarter, this is all there will ever be. Shouldn't a store of value hold its...
So, not bad. They aren't promoting Cardano. They aren't promoting XRP. They aren't promoting anything. They're promoting Bitcoin. And not only are they promoting Bitcoin, they're highlighting the inefficiencies of the alternative. They're highlighting the fault of fiat. They're highlighting the downside of fiat. And remember, it's all about, and you guys are going to kick me for doing this, moving the Overton window, exposing people to this idea that, fiat is a fraud, fiat is fake. The government is just going to debase it. They're going to print more of it. And if you're holding and earning in fiat and saving in fiat, you are getting poorer every single time the government prints money. So it's our job as Bitcoin content creators, and I think anyone within the industry, to really expose that truth. Because once you expose that truth, the natural human reaction is to seek a better alternative. Of course, that better alternative is Bitcoin. So let's jump into today's news. Coinbase joins the S&P 500 as Bitcoin treasury exposure goes mainstream. On May 19, 2025, Coinbase will officially join the S&P 500, widely regarded as the most trusted, most tracked equity index in the world, with over 5 trillion in assets benchmarked to it. The S&P 500 isn't just a measure of corporate strength, it's a gravitational center of global capital allocation. And starting next week, it will include a Bitcoin treasury company. Coinbase currently holds 9,267 BTC on its balance sheet, valued at $963 million at today's price of $104,000 per Bitcoin, making it the 9th largest public corporate Bitcoin holder globally. This marks a quiet turning point for Bitcoin and capital markets, one that reframes the treasury conversation and reshapes how companies think about index eligibility, institutional flows, and balance sheet strategy. Now, a couple things that I'll say, right? So Coinbase, I think, was launched in like 2013. MicroStrategy had a smaller market cap than Coinbase. MicroStrategy has been around for a long time, and Michael Saylor's an absolute genius. But Coinbase had the ability, because it got in significantly earlier, to become the Bitcoin holding company. But they chose to go down the path of the altcoin casino. It seems like, according to their ads, they're walking back that a little bit. And of course, the pressure from the public markets, Brian Armstrong has no choice but to essentially take a serious look at Michael Saylor's Bitcoin strategy. Take a look at Jack Mallers' Bitcoin strategy with 21, and take a look at David Bailey's strategy with Nakamoto, and he has to take a serious look and say, hey, you know what, this Bitcoin treasury strategy thing is a real thing. The markets are reacting very positive to it. I kind of don't have a choice. I'm gonna have to type a pivot some type of way, some type of fashion. And I think that's what's happening now. But it's a shame, though. Could you imagine Brian Armstrong looking at strategy? I think strategy overtook Coinbase's market cap. They had such a head start, and they squandered it in a way because they focused on altcoins. That's a shame, isn't it? Anyways, the most passive flows in finance just found Bitcoin. Coinbase's addition to the index means something profound. This is what I was talking about earlier. Millions of investors will soon have indirect exposure to Bitcoin, and they didn't choose it because the S&P 500 is tracked by passive strategies. Funds and institutions must purchase Coinbase stock in proportion to its index weight. If Coinbase is assigned even a 0.2% weighting, that implies that more than $10 billion in net inflows from index tracking vehicles. This is not speculative capital. This is mandatory exposure. That's right. You heard that right. That is not a YouTube thumbnail. That is not a Forbes article thumbnail. That is an actual fact. Mandatory exposure to Bitcoin because Coinbase is joining the S&P 500. That is signal. That is absolutely massive, and at least $10 billion of net inflows. Now, could you imagine if Brian Armstrong follows in the footsteps of Saylor, follows in the footsteps of Mallers, follows in the footsteps of David Bailey, and says, you know what? We actually want to add more Bitcoin on our balance sheet. The price of their stock goes through the roof as the price of Bitcoin goes through the roof. And then that weighted average increases, right? You know where this is going, right? Anyways, and for the first time, those rules lead directly to Bitcoin. Bitcoin treasuries are now index eligible. For years, Bitcoin on the corporate balance sheet was treated as a novelty, or worse, a liability. But Coinbase's inclusion signals something different. Bitcoin exposure is now compatible with the highest standards of institutional eligibility. It's a powerful validation for public companies already holding Bitcoin, and a strategic consideration for those that aren't. Index inclusion is not reserved for fiat-only treasuries. Coinbase addition confirms that sound operations and a Bitcoin-aligned balance sheet are now not mutually exclusive. In fact, they now may be complementary. It goes on to say, strategy may be next to join the S&P 500. I hope you guys are connecting the dots here. This could lead to a domino effect, where essentially more and more companies that have Bitcoin on their treasury join the S&P 500. That weight continues to shift, and essentially it forces companies that don't have Bitcoin on their balance sheet to put Bitcoin on their balance sheet to remain competitive. And all the while, there's only 21 million Bitcoin. What do you think is going to happen to the price? Number go up. Isn't absolute scarcity absolutely beautiful. Coinbase may be the first, it goes on to say, Coinbase may be the first S&P 500 company with a Bitcoin treasury, but it likely won't be the last. Strategy, formerly MicroStrategy, is widely viewed as the next potential candidate. The company meets many of the S&P 500's baseline criteria. It is US-based and publicly listed on NASDAQ. It has sufficient free float and market capitalization. Its last 4 quarters of GAAP earnings are positive. And perhaps most notably, Strategy is the largest corporate Bitcoin holder in the world by far. As of today, it holds 568,000 Bitcoin, currently worth $59 billion. Its balance sheet is no longer just Bitcoin heavy, it is Bitcoin native. If admitted, Strategy would represent an even deeper exposure to Bitcoin inside the world's most influential index. This matters because it signals that Bitcoin is becoming a foundational component of corporate capital formation, not an outlier. This is absolutely massive. Again, Bitcoin on your treasury is not becoming an option. It's becoming mandatory in order for you to become competitive. And I'm making a prediction. And so far, we've been pretty correct on our predictions on Simply Bitcoin. Tomorrow's Bitcoin news today. Coinbase is going to be admitted. I think Brian Armstrong is going to be forced to follow in the footsteps of MicroStrategy. He wants to make his shareholders happy. He's going to add more Bitcoin to Coinbase's treasury. The market cap of Coinbase is going to go up. The stock of Coinbase is going to go up. That weighted index that they were talking about earlier, that mandatory exposure is going to increase. And then you arrive in a world of aligned incentives. So essentially, anybody that has exposure to those index funds that hold the S&P 500 are going to have exposure to Bitcoin. And all of a sudden, all of Bitcoin's naysayers, all of Bitcoin's enemies, all the people that talk very ill of Bitcoin are no longer going to talk ill of Bitcoin, because if they talk ill of Bitcoin, they're directly hurting their bags. And this is the beauty of this. And by the way, the S&P indexes are some of the most popular indexes on the face of the planet. So if you have a retirement fund, if you have a 401k, if you have a financial advisor, more than likely they're recommending to you an S&P index, an S&P 500 index. And it has just been announced today with this article starting May 19th that they are going to have mandatory exposure to Bitcoin just by having exposure to the S&P 500. That is absolutely massive news. And you guys know this. You guys have been around Bitcoin for long enough. You guys know the deal. You guys know the drill. You start by dipping a little bit of your toe in, right? And then maybe you put in your foot. And then maybe you put in your leg. But you end up going fully submerged 100% into Bitcoin, right? Because it is the best asset the world has ever seen. So this is just the start. This is incredibly exciting. And I'm going to keep saying what I've been saying this entire cycle. From a news perspective, this has been the most bullish cycle I've ever witnessed in my 9 years in Bitcoin, coming up to my 10 years in Bitcoin. I've never seen this much bullish news back to back to back to back. Of course, you had the election of a pro-Bitcoin administration. You had the freedom of Ross Ulbricht. You had the repeal of SAB 121. You had the introduction of the strategic Bitcoin reserve via executive order. You had all this amazing news. You have essentially signals coming from the administration, from Bo Hines, from Howard Lutnick, that they have every intention to acquire Bitcoin in a budget-neutral way. You have the success of Bitcoin holding companies on Wall Street, Strategy outperforming NVIDIA, completely leaving NVIDIA in the dust. I mean, from a news perspective, this is insanity. I've never seen this before. We wish this would have happened in 2018. If this type of news would have broke in 2018, the price would have like 10x'd in a day. Opti knows what I'm talking about. So, from a news perspective, extremely bullish. I think from a price action perspective, a little bit underwhelming, but I think it's just a matter of time. Like a beach ball that you put underwater, it's just a matter of time before that beach ball explodes to the upside. And I think we're starting to see the first innings of that. Anyways, I do want to welcome our special guest for today. We have Kent, CEO of Sazmining, in the house today, guys. We're going to be doing a live demo during the culture segment. We're going to be showing you guys how easy it is to mine Bitcoin using Sazmining. Bitcoin mining as a service. This is top tier. You guys definitely don't want to miss that. We're going to cover that during the culture segment. But first, Kent, do you have any opinions, any thoughts? This is significant. This is a big effing deal. Coinbase being added to the S&P 500. And then by that happening, anybody that has exposure via index funds has indirect exposure to Bitcoin, which means that they're fans of Bitcoin, whether they like it or not. Kent, what are your thoughts?
Well, there's a part of me that absolutely loves this because I know a lot of people that are going to wind up with Bitcoin exposure here do not like Bitcoin, but they're going to be forced to hold it, and they're going to be forced to hold their breath and realize that the water they're stepping into isn't so bad. But to me, this is kind of the inexorable march of Bitcoin here, right? Like, it is a financial or a monetary black hole, right? Where there's this singularity at the center of every black hole. And for Bitcoin, there's just a reality that once you go through the other side, it's better, right? All of us that are fully submerged in the waters of Bitcoin here, we know that it's a better reality. And I think that's ultimately where your excitement is coming from, at least for me here, Nico. The excitement is coming in because it's like, holy shit, we're going to finally get more of these guys in the water that are going to realize it's not so bad. And actually, they're going to walk down this trail that we've all trod before that takes to a better place. And eventually they'll realize, like, yeah, I'm going to make more money here, but actually, what I thought was money, these dollars, it's actually not money. Bitcoin is money. And that changing, that transformation, getting more people started on that journey, that's what we need to get to the next steps of human freedom. So I'm like you, I'm super bullish about this. And in some ways it feels like Coinbase going full circle. You know, I picked up my first Bitcoin on Coinbase in 2015, and there wasn't, I can't even remember if there's anything else being sold there. And to watch them go from this Bitcoin, company, Bitcoin only sort of company in the early years, go through the shitcoin cycle, and now coming out on the other side, it kind of almost feels like there's this prodigal son sort of story. Now, I'm skeptically optimistic about them because of the journey they've been on. So, I love to see it. And they've got a lot of bad past deeds, as far as I'm concerned, that they need to come clean with before I'm really going to be supportive of their efforts. But this is massively bullish news. And regardless, glad to see it.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. The Coinbase, they are responsible. They are the quintessential Coinbase altcoin casino. And Brian Armstrong paid a heavy price for that, because if he would have just focused on Bitcoin, did a Bitcoin strategy like Saylor, Coinbase would be significantly bigger right now. The fact that strategy holds more Bitcoin than Coinbase is absolutely embarrassing for Brian Armstrong, in my humble opinion. Right now, it's still an extremely successful company. To each their own. Everyone has a different strategy, but that's the beauty of markets. Markets are going to show you, what company is outperforming, what company is doing better, and clearly, Saylor, with the strategy, I love the name change. It's so fitting. Clearly is the superior strategy. It's clearly working, right? Anyways, Opti, what's your take on this? Dude, this is some big news here on Simply. Sometimes we have trouble finding news to cover on a daily basis because we are a daily live show, but it's one of those days, man, where, the news breaks itself.
Yeah, well, before I kind of get my take, I don't know if you guys saw, but there was an article, or rather an interview. I think Brian Armstrong did it with Bloomberg. If I might be forgetting where it was posted, but he was quoted as saying they thought about doing the strategy, and they basically voted against it. And in hindsight, they said that was the best move for us. I think in hindsight, it might be some cope, because we see what's happening with strategy, and it's like, it's very obvious now that that should have been their move, try to acquire as much Bitcoin as possible. And maybe this also goes into the whole fact that they are one of the biggest altcoin casinos in the world, and they have made a lot of mistakes in the recent years, and they're not very liked in the Bitcoin only community because of their shitcoinery and the fact that there has been seemingly a lot of attacks on Bitcoin coming out of Coinbase, particularly posting or listing Bcash when it was this whole controversy. They've made a lot of huge mistakes, and it's funny to see Brian Armstrong, and maybe it was the right move for their company at the time, but it's funny that he literally came out and said, like, yeah, we thought about this strategy and we voted against it, and we're all like, bruh, that's probably like the worst move you could have done. Anyways, on today's news, I think two things can be true. One, you can recognize this as being a huge story. And two, also be skeptical of Coinbase and, their history and what they're doing as a shitcoin casino. So on the first part, obviously, the big thing here is that now Bitcoin is essentially a core portion of every institutional investor's portfolio. Like, this is a huge story in and of itself. Like Kent and Nico were saying, everyone out there that is investing in the S&P 500 index now has indirect exposure to Bitcoin. That's millions of potential investors that now are acknowledging, or rather not consciously acknowledging, that, hey, Bitcoin's something that you need to hold on to. So on that portion, I think it's very big news here. And like we've been saying, the news around Bitcoin has been huge in the last couple of weeks, or rather months, and the price hasn't ripped, which makes me think that once it does start ripping, it's going to rip incredibly high. And I think we were all being a little conservative, and we all still have PTSD from 2021. But I'm starting to get really bullish, and it's just like, with all this news going on, once we do see, as I think it was Kaiser who quoted it, like the mother of all supply shocks, this thing's going to start ripping, and that's going to be really fun again to see Bitcoin kind of go back into its parabolic stage, and maybe we can get some 2017 vibes back into here, and it just goes so much higher than we think it does, and kind of the classic tropes of, don't sell your Bitcoin, because once you sell your Bitcoin at whatever X price you have in mind, it's just going to keep ripping higher. So that's going to be fun. And then also the big question of, are we going to see a 2026 bull run with all of this really bullish news and all of this talk about people holding Bitcoin long term? Now we know the institutions are here, they're holding Bitcoin. I don't think they're going to just be trading in and out like traditional, Bitcoin shitcoin traders. So I think the dynamics around Bitcoin have changed. Now, the second part of what I said earlier, the fact that they are one of the biggest altcoin casinos, it's going to be very interesting to see what they do with that extra capital going into their stock price here. So, are they actually making a pivot going, more into Bitcoin because of what they're seeing? Basically, no one really wants all these shitcoins except for, the degenerate Bitcoin shitcoin traders, and everyone else is like, I only want to get Bitcoin exposure. All of this other stuff is trash. I want to avoid it as much as possible. Will they continue to double down on Bitcoin and realize the error of their ways? Or will they take all that extra capital and essentially just do a whole new round of shitcoin marketing, which is just going to be absolutely horrible? So again, I think these two thoughts can be, held together, where it's like, this is a very huge news for the Bitcoin industry at large, and two, being very skeptical of what Coinbase is going to do. And of course, here we try not to talk about Coinbase too much because we're not the biggest fans of them, but this is a huge news story. And I think when a lot of people think about Bitcoin or where to get Bitcoin, they still think of, you go to Coinbase. And until that changes, I think this is a big narrative shift around the industry. And obviously, there's still a lot of work for us to do out there, and basically, make sure people don't go to Coinbase. But hey,
you guys got to go to bitcoinwell.com, man. Anyways, so before we move on to the next segment, what I will say is I want to talk about the topic of rehypothecation. I want to talk about the topic of paper Bitcoin, which I mentioned in the very, very beginning parts of the show. So, this isn't unfounded. This is actually something that, there were some signals of originally when this news broke, that Coinbase Coinbase was doing some shenanigans in terms of the custody of it, it was denied heavily by industry heavyweights. Like they were just denying it flat right. They were saying, no, that's BS. That's not happening. But at the same time, don't pay attention to what they say, pay attention to what they do. BlackRock has actually decided to diversify in terms of their custodians. And something that you guys have to remember about Coinbase custody is that the vast majority of the ETFs, except for Fidelity, are custodied with Coinbase. So I think it's like 11 out of 12 or like 10 out of 12 have all their Bitcoin with Coinbase. MicroStrategy has their Bitcoin with Coinbase. Right. So it's literally a honeypot. And this is why we talk about paper Bitcoin. Like, I'm not trying to, I did an episode with Caitlin Long and Larry Lepard last year. And essentially the entire topic of that episode was talking about rehypothecation. Rehypothecation this, rehypothecation that. And both Caitlin Long, who is the CEO and founder of Custodia Bank, and Larry Lepard both had their worries. Now, on the other side, I had James Lavish and Greg Foss. They weren't as concerned. They said, the system is built in such a way where, they can't be doing that type of stuff. But if you take a look at the gold market, it's like an open secret at this point that a lot of this gold that is being sold, the reason that gold isn't a lot higher in terms of price right now is because a lot of paper gold on the market. And my argument is if you have all these ETFs, all these institutions that are holding millions of Bitcoin, all under one roof, like who's to say that Coinbase isn't selling paper Bitcoin, isn't selling Bitcoin that they actually have? They're just selling Bitcoin IOUs. There would be absolutely no way for these institutions to verify this unless they decided to all go to Coinbase all at once and say, hey, Coinbase, could you send me my Bitcoin, please? Right? This is why self-custody is so important. I remember there was like a movement back in the day, like Proof of Keys Day, which essentially has died down now that the number go up, audience is the biggest one these days. Guys, like the differentiating factor with Bitcoin is the ability for you to take self-custody. That's one of the biggest, it was one of the best characteristics of it. Gold, it's difficult because of its physical characteristics. Bitcoin, it's easy. And regardless of the amount, right? So you should be taking self-custody of your Bitcoin. If for whatever reason you're not doing that, you don't own Bitcoin. You own an IOU of Bitcoin. And I think you can make an argument here, and we've been more right than wrong in the past here on Simply Bitcoin. We've been doing this for almost 5 years now. I wouldn't be surprised if Coinbase was selling paper Bitcoin to a lot of these institutions. And I wouldn't be surprised that the price isn't higher right now because of that fact. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm just saying. I don't know for certain, but anyhow. Guys, before we move on to the rest of today's show, I do want to give an extremely special shout out to a platform that doesn't allow rehypothecation. Of course, I'm talking about the best place to build your automatic self-custody Bitcoin stack, bitcoinwell.com. The reason we recommend it here at Simply Bitcoin is it's a self-custody by default Bitcoin on-ramp. Enable your financial independence today. What does that mean? That means that when you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, as soon as the funds clear, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet address, which perfectly aligns with the Simply Bitcoin ethos of reclaiming back your financial sovereignty by taking self-custody of your Bitcoin. If you're a higher net worth individual looking to buy $50,000 worth of Bitcoin or more, you want a white glove service and you want a dedicated representative every time you want to buy or sell Bitcoin, check out Bitcoin Well Infinite. Go to bitcoinwell.com/OTC to get started. And every time you buy Bitcoin on Bitcoin Well, you earn Bitcoin Well points. And we're going to do a Bitcoin Wishing Well contest live for you guys right now. We tossed a coin into the Wishing Well. First person to scan it with their Lightning wallets has won 505 sats. If you go to bitcoinwell.com/simply today, You get 3 tosses into the wishing well. Every single toss, you have an opportunity to win up to 1 million Satoshis. And every single time you buy Bitcoin, you earn points, and you could redeem those points towards these awesome gifts, like a Simply Bitcoin hoodie, an orange Cybertruck, a stamp seed plate. It's really, really cool. Guys, sign up to bitcoinwell.com today and go to bitcoinwell.com/simply to get 3 tosses into the wishing well, absolutely free.
I want to tell you guys about our sponsor, Stamp Seed. Is your Bitcoin in cold storage really secure? Are your seed words really secure? Stamp Seed's do-it-yourself kit has everything you'll need to hammer your seed words into commercial-grade titanium plates instead of writing them down on paper. Don't do that. Paper sucks. You want to literally stamp your seed into this plate of titanium. Your words are actually stamped into the metal plate with this hammer. So once your words are in, they aren't going anywhere. No risk of the plate breaking apart and your pieces falling everywhere. Titanium stamp seeds will survive nearly triple the heat produced by a house fire. They are also crush-proof, waterproof, non-corrosive, and most importantly, because this is generational wealth, time-proof. All things that paper is not, allowing you to hodl your Bitcoin for the long haul. I mean, here is the plate that they crushed. They put in water, they put a blowtorch to it, and as you can see, the words have survived. Stamp your seed on Stamp Seed. And you can use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on their store. Head over to stampseed.com today.
All right, everybody, we are back. Scan the QR code on your screen right now. It'll take you directly to the Stamp Seed website where you can use promo code SIMPLY to get 15% off anything on the store. At the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is $103,840. Block height, 896,571. Sats per dollar, under 1,000. Love to see it. 963 sats per dollar. Market cap, 2.06 trillion. Bitcoin versus gold market cap, 9.03%. Percentage issued, 94.59%. Decline from all-time high, negative 4.9%. Realized monetary inflation, 0.84%. In the grand scheme of things, the party is just getting started. Anyways, I do have a clip for you guys from one of the latest interviews of Natalie Burnell and Michael Saylor. Michael Saylor is talking about the opportunity cost of selling a Bitcoin. Guys, if you sell a Bitcoin today, it's like selling $13 million. Do you want to sell? That's a terrible trade. So if you sell $100,000 worth of Bitcoin, it might cost you $13 million in the future. That doesn't sound too hot. Anyways, here's Michael Saylor explaining it on the Coin Stories podcast by Natalie Burnell.
I think the best way to get superior returns, 100x type returns, if you're an individual, would be you keep your day job, and so you maximize the cash flow you generate via whatever your profession is. You're responsible on your expenditures. You have to think, in the year 2045, I think a Bitcoin's worth $13 million. So every Bitcoin that you don't buy is a $13 million cost. That Ferrari that you're going to buy is going to cost you like 6 Bitcoin. And so it's going to be $100 million Ferrari, right? If you look out 20 years. So you have to keep your job, unless you're insanely rich, don't splurge on the Ferrari, buy the 6 Bitcoin instead. And with regard to leverage, the intelligent leverage for the individual is generally long-dated, mid-dated mortgage debt. So if I have any kind of property, if I have a house, I would put a long mortgage on it, a 10-year mortgage, a 15 to 20-year mortgage on it, especially a conforming loan, and then I would roll it into Bitcoin. Because mortgage debt is not mark to market. It's against an asset which is fairly stable. Normally the interest rates are somewhat subsidized by a Fannie Mae or a Freddie Mac program or a government program. So it's it's the cheapest form of permanent capital that someone can get. So, I give you what you shouldn't do. You shouldn't quit your job. You shouldn't splurge on sports cars you can't afford. Don't buy a yacht because it's obscenely expensive, and don't pay off your mortgages. Don't get debt free. Any capital you have that's not marked to market capital would be better invested in an asset that's.
I mean, like, what do you guys think? Overly bullish, overly bearish. I see Opti laughing his ass off. I want to know why.
Yeah, well, like, look, I'm just thinking from like a traditional normie perspective. Like, they're probably thinking this is like the worst financial advice ever. Never pay off your debt, refinance your home, take out a longer mortgage, and just keep buying Bitcoin. Saylor's just gone full bulltard. I kind of love it. It's like I was literally joking with a friend the other day. It's like, should I pay off my credit card or should I just buy Bitcoin? I'm like, bro, it's like, that's the stupidest question I've ever heard. Like, buy Bitcoin. What are you talking about? Like, join the cool kids club and nuke your credit score. Like, what are you even talking about? But here we have Saylor, billionaire. He's talking to the richest people in the world, institutions, corporations, high net worth individuals. And he's like, basically, you're an idiot. Like, don't pay off your debt. Go in debt more and continue to buy Bitcoin. Like, I just find that hilarious. This, like, from a traditional view, this is like the worst financial advice you could give someone. But when you put Bitcoin into this, it's like, yeah, it makes sense to me.
I do want to give a shout out to the stream. Almost 2,000 people watching live. Rumble's absolutely popping off. I want to give a shout out to the YouTube chat on the verge of breaking 500 live viewers. We're already at 130 likes. Help us break 200 likes by the time the show wraps up. So guys, smash the like button if you guys are enjoying the content. Kent, what are your thoughts, man? Do you think he's being overly bullish, overly bearish? Someone in the chat is saying, sell your chairs. What are your thoughts, Kent?
Well, I think I drank way too much of the orange Kool-Aid because I didn't even see how ironic it was until Opti pointed it out there. But yeah, I think from a normie perspective, like, it's absolutely absurd. And from us and where we are, it's like, oh yeah, it's normal. Isn't everybody doing that? So I think it's good advice. I think, what I see actually, like, on a bigger scale is the incentives of Bitcoin are actually driving like an incredibly conservative behavior. Like, okay, yes, the mortgage part, let's set that aside. But the rest of what he was talking about was just strong, like, conservative, values. Like, hey, try to save as much as possible and put it all into Bitcoin. You're going to be fine, right? Like, that's a pretty simple message that I think if more of us take it and take that to the market, like, that's the easiest way that I'm able to orange pill people, is say, just quit saving in dollars, save in Bitcoin.
100%. Quit saving in dollars, save in Bitcoin, stack some wild sats. This is the way to live. This is the Bitcoin Zen. Opti used to talk a lot about Bitcoin Zen, not anymore. Now he's a jaded Bitcoiner. There's no such thing.
Content creator, bro.
There is no Bitcoin Zen anymore. But yeah, I mean, Natalie dropping absolute fire with that interview with Saylor. Saylor basically saying, like, look, don't buy that Ferrari. Don't buy that yacht. I mean, the yacht one is obvious. Buying a yacht is like literally lighting money on fire. But, the whole Ferrari thing, it's like, don't buy a Ferrari. That 6 Bitcoin, 6 Bitcoin, 1 Bitcoin, 13 million. 6 Bitcoin, roughly 6. That's a $60 million Ferrari. That's a really expensive Ferrari, So it's that low time preference that Saylor's talking about. But again, what Opti is saying, it sounds absolutely absurd from like a normie perspective, But again, if you take a look at Bitcoin's past, I mean, guys, you have to remember, back in 2017, January of 2017, I don't know how many years ago that was now, but Bitcoin was at $1,000. It is currently at $103,885, right? That's more than 100x. That's absolutely absurd. And the bull market hasn't really run its course yet, right? That's another thing to talk about. So, on a 20-year time scale, is what Saylor's saying, is it really that outlandish? I wouldn't think so. Anyways, guys, it's going to be a great show. We have tons to cover. We're going to hit the news segment. We will be right back in just a second. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Casa. Casa makes self-custody easy and secure. As a Bitcoiner, I care about holding my own private keys, but multi-sig can sometimes get tricky. Casa nails it with a multi-key security. So even if one key gets lost or stolen, your Bitcoin stays safe. And you don't give up custody, meaning no one could access your Bitcoin but you. No seed phrase anxiety, no single point of failure. I've been telling my friends and family about Casa for years. Their UX and UI on their app is by far the best in the industry. Inheritance planning is built in, and they even offer Casa for Business if you're thinking about a Bitcoin treasury. Hit up casa.io today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 10% off Casa Standard or Casa Premium. Head over to casa.io.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, CoinKite. If you take your Bitcoin security seriously, you'll need the best Bitcoin hardware wallet on the market to take self-custody. That's where Cold Card comes in. The Cold Card Q is the most advanced Bitcoin signing device ever made. It's got a full keyboard, larger screen, and NFC support, making air-gap signing easier than ever. It's built for power users who want the ultimate security without sacrificing usability. And if you're looking for a battle-tested, uncompromising cold storage, the Cold Card MK4 is your go-to with PSBT signing, an industrial-grade secure element, and USB-C. It's the perfect blend of security and convenience. Both devices are, of course, 100% Bitcoin only, open source, and built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. Secure your Bitcoin the right way with the Cold Card Q and the MK4. Head over to coldcard.com today and use promo code SIMPLY to get 5% off anything on the store.
All right, everybody, this is Opti, and he's holding the Cold Card Q in his hand, which, by the way, if you use promo code SIMPLY, you'll get 5% off anything on the coldcard.com store. Guys, this is the best Bitcoin hardware wallet on the market. It's incredibly easy to use, has an A to Z keyboard. It's open source. It has 2 secure elements. You could tap to sign. You could scan to sign. You could plug it in to sign. You could do anything to sign. Get yourself a Cold Card Q or an MK4. Scan the QR code on your screen and use promo code SIMPLY to get 5% off. Not 5% off Opti, but 5% off Cold Card. Anyways, so let's cover today's headline. Arizona rejects Bitcoin reserve plan, caps ATM use at 2K per day. Katie Hobbs, Arizona governor, vetoed 3 significant crypto bills, but backed tough consumer protection rules for Bitcoin ATMs. Governor Hobbs denied Senate Bill 1373 on May 12th, which would have established a digital asset strategic reserve fund to store crypto that has been seized by law enforcement or allocated by appropriate governing bodies. Governor Hobbs stated the proposal I presented it as risky due to volatility associated with crypto. Quote, today I vetoed Senate Bill 1373. Currently, volatility in cryptocurrency markets does not make it a prudent fit for general fund dollars. It goes on to say, on May 3rd, Hobbs denied the Arizona Strategic Bitcoin Reserve Act, which would have allowed the state to invest up to 10% of Treasury and retirement fund investments in Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. The third proposal bill was vetoed, Senate Bill 1024, which would allow state agencies to accept cryptocurrency as payment of taxes and fees. While these investments were rejected, Hobbs did, however, approve House Bill 2387 on May 12th, which placed new rules on crypto ATMs in Arizona. The legislation requires kiosks to display clear and multilingual and educational warnings about common crypto scams and requires users to acknowledge those risks before doing transactions. Operators must also provide detailed receipts, including transaction information, contact details, fees, and refund policy. New users will now only be able to spend up to $2,000 on their first day, but returning customers will have limits up to $10,500 after 10 days. In addition, users who fall victim to scams and report them within 30 days will get a full refund, including the fees charged. Look, I'll be honest, guys. This is incredibly hostile towards Bitcoin ATM companies, number one. And number two, three vetoes rejecting a strategic Bitcoin reserve initiative in the state of Arizona. I'm going to say something. It's a pattern that I've picked up. We're going there. We on Simply Bitcoin have remained neutral for our entire history. It was only until this last election, when the Samurai Wallet developers were targeted, that we chose essentially to get political, and we chose to choose a side. We said, guys, if you want a pro Bitcoin environment in the United States, you should vote for Trump or RFK Jr. It seems like the Democratic Party is hostile towards Bitcoin. It seems like they still remain hostile towards Bitcoin. You could make an argument that their stance towards Bitcoin cost them the last election because a major portion of their voting demographic is the younger generations, and the younger generations absolutely love Bitcoin because they got completely screwed by the 2008 financial crisis. So, I mean, it's a troubling trend. Like, Elizabeth Warren hasn't changed course. And I asked Senator Lummis about this back in February when I had my interview with her in Washington, D.C. One of the things that I said was, Senator Lummis, there was a bill that was introduced in the House. It was very straightforward, right? The bill essentially was, it would forbid the federal government from launching a central bank digital currency. It literally went along party lines. The Democratic Party voted against the bill. The Republican Party voted for the bill that would ban the federal government from launching a CBDC. The latest Genius Act, the so-called Stablecoin Act, which had supposed Democratic co-sponsors on that bill. That bill was shut down in the Senate. Two Republicans joined the vote. I think it was Rand Paul and Senator Hawley. But again, it was across party lines. So this isn't a political show. You tuned into the wrong show. This isn't the Daily Wire for trying to get your dose of politics. This is a Bitcoin show. But what I will say is that it would be a disservice to you guys if we didn't point out some patterns that we're picking up here. Why does the Democratic Party continue to be anti-Bitcoin, specifically if it helps their constituents? It doesn't make sense. In my opinion, and I think Elizabeth Warren made this very, very clear, I think they want a central bank digital currency. And I think that if you have Bitcoin competing with the central bank digital currency, people are going to choose Bitcoin by default because it's better money. They don't want competition. So that's why they're aggressive towards the industry. Like, no one's better than their incentives. I think, to me, it's clear as day. It's unfortunate that we have to talk about these types of things because this is a Bitcoin show, but it would be a disservice if I didn't point it out. Anyways, Opti, what are your thoughts, bro? Because you were the famous OptiGate. Opti was one of the first people to point this out, and it was like, Nico, speak up, speak your mind. What are you talking about? And I was like, no, bro, we have to remain neutral. And then I blew a gasket when I found out about the Samurai guys. When they arrested the Samurai guys, I said, you know what? Trump 2024. Like, we don't have a choice now, right? So anyways, Opti, what are your thoughts on this, man? Like, why? Like, they just lost a major election. right? You would think that, you know, from a policy perspective, they would change. Now, again, it's not monolithic. I have to be very, very clear there. There are Republicans that are against it. There are Democrats that are for it, like Congressman Ro Khanna of California, right? But by and whole, this seems to be a partisan issue when it shouldn't be a partisan issue because Bitcoin is completely apolitical. But I think it would be dishonest of us not to point this out. Opti, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts are probably pretty well known on this show. The Dems are lost in the sauce, is all I can say. They constantly do things and they act like, you know, they're your parent or your teacher, and they do this like bleeding heart thing where they you know, pass stuff or veto stuff like, we're doing this for the best of you people and we got to protect you. And it's like, okay, you know, Arizona can have fun staying poor. Though I am kind of okay with her vetoing that second bill where it was essentially saying they could, like, you know, steal your Bitcoin after 3 years and then they put it to their reserve. So I'm kind of okay with that getting vetoed in this thought of Bitcoin is too volatile. Like, all right, cool. Like, you don't understand what's going on. I'm okay with this. As that Sun Tzu quote is, you know, you don't interrupt your enemy when they are making mistakes. It's like, okay, awesome. I actually love this. But yeah, this is obviously from a Bitcoiner's perspective. My bias is I'm very biased here. This is very bad for the people of Arizona. If they're making more stringent laws around Bitcoin, I think this is only going to hurt people. On that point, though, again, I'm kind of okay with them saying, you know, some kind of notification saying that every crypto is a scam or whatever besides Bitcoin. Obviously, that's not what it's going to say. But if it basically said like Bitcoin's legit, everything else is a scam, again, like I'm kind of okay with this. And then the third part, like the limits on getting out of Bitcoin or the limits on the ATMs, I think it just goes to show like capital controls never work, and that's usually a sign of problems in the empire or the traditional financial system. And so if they are limiting how much Bitcoin you can buy, personally, that's like, you know, smoke just to show like you probably want to get your money out of the system as quickly as possible because, hey, if you can't buy Bitcoin, and furthermore, if you have money in a bank, it's not your money anymore. So before they go even harder on limiting the amount of Bitcoin you can buy, you should probably be buying Bitcoin.
Yeah, 100%. Another thing that I'll say too is like, I'm going to move the Overton window because I was one of the first people to say this on X and it absolutely blew up. Like, I mean, should I say it, Opti?
I don't know what you're going to say, but we are on YouTube. So
should I say it? Like, okay, like I'm going to say it. Like, if you're in the US, based on the actions of the Dems, it's probably a good idea that you vote Republican. Like, this is like, it makes me feel extremely uncomfortable to say that because like this isn't a political show and everyone has different, approaches to like how they look at different policies and whatever. But if you're looking at it from a Bitcoin first perspective, like Bitcoin first, right? Like I'm a single issue voter and I care about the future of Bitcoin and the Bitcoin industry here in the United States. Like, regardless of what happened during the last election, it seems like there's still hostility. And if you're a Bitcoiner or a Bitcoin entrepreneur or a Bitcoin holder in the US, like you would be thinking, you're like, okay, wait a second. Like, you know, like what should I do? Right. And it's unfortunate because again, like this isn't a partisan issue. Bitcoin is apolitical. Bitcoin doesn't favor one side or the other side. Bitcoin is for anyone. Anyone could adopt Bitcoin. But again, fiat politics still matter as long as we're on a fiat standard and the government has a central bank to essentially enforce their monopoly on violence over society. And if you have a vote and you can use that vote to, you know, obviously have more favorable regulation and a more favorable regulatory environment, use that vote, right? Use that vote to your advantage. I mean, like the fact that I feel uncomfortable saying this tells me that it's outside the Overton window. The fact that I feel uncomfortable talking about this tells me that, you know, this isn't something that is openly discussed among Bitcoin circles. But at the same time, we were the first people to say, hey guys, it's probably a good idea to vote for Trump if you like Bitcoin in the US. Like, we were the first ones to say that. And we got a lot of shit for it when we said it openly last year during election season. In hindsight, it was a really, really good decision. Ross was freed. We got the strategic Bitcoin reserve, the end of Operation Choke Point 2.0, the repeal of SAB 121, the so-called Trump pump, which didn't really amount to anything at the end. But, some positive things overall. What I would like to see is a change, right? Like some good faith, because then it wouldn't be a partisan issue. Then you wouldn't force Bitcoiners or the Bitcoin community to have to choose a side, because I don't like that. I don't think Bitcoin should be political. I don't think Bitcoin should be treated in the realm of politics like everything else is, because then what happens is every 4 years there's an effing pendulum, right? And if you're a Bitcoin business in the US, it's very unstable, right? Like, it's like 1 year it's going to go this way, the other year it's going to go that way. How do you plan for that? You do have to move operations. Do you have to, there was a point last year where me and Opti were seriously debating moving to El Salvador. Like, we were seriously talking about that. Like, self-custody was under attack. There was a proposed 30% Bitcoin mining tax. Like, what's going on there? Now, I do want to give a shout out to Dennis Porter. I do want to give a shout out to Bitcoin Policy Institute that are making tremendous strides. I do want to give a shout out to the Democrats that are, that have supported Bitcoin, specifically on the state level. You've seen tremendous amount of support on the state level from Democrats, but it seems like predominant Democrats in the federal government or governors seem to still be somewhat anti-Bitcoin, and it doesn't make sense at all whatsoever. It should change. Bitcoin should not be political. But just because you believe that, the way that you force an issue, the way that you force a change is to vote a certain way, right? Anyways, the chat is hilarious. That made me feel very uncomfortable to talk about that topic. Kent, I know you're a CEO of a company. What are your thoughts on this, man?
Oh man, I think money is inherently political. I think we've tried to stay out of the fight as much as we can, but I think money is inherently political. And actually, these actions from the governor here in the state of Arizona, I want to talk about them for a minute, because I think there's actually some important knock-on consequences that are going to come from this. So first of all, it's pretty clear. A lot of people believe that it was because of the Bitcoin community's support of Trump that Trump got elected. To me, this lady just decided she didn't want to get reelected, and that it will probably be a short tenure for her. But prediction, don't know if that'll come true. But the reason why for me is quite simple, because as the number goes up, there are more Bitcoiners with more money that are getting more into politics, and the incentives are set here. The Bitcoin community just learned, hey, we got the tar knocked out of us here the last 4 years. We're starting to win right now. Let's do more of what it takes to win. And as the price of Bitcoin goes up, there's more dollars for us to influence this process. So we're going to. And that's why I think people like this woman, Karen Hobbs, I think her name is short for this world. And I think that the Bitcoin community, it's actually been a wonderful thing from where I sit, is sort of matured to the point of saying, hey, no, we got our Bitcoin. We're just going to sit on the sidelines and let this process play out. I think the Bitcoin community is instead realizing, hey, no, we're going to take the center stage. I heard a statistic 6 years ago or so. I don't know if it's true at all, but the statistic was something like at $200,000, the majority of billionaires on the planet are Bitcoiners. Now, again, I don't know if that number is true, but there is a number out there that at a certain point, the most powerful community on the planet will be the Bitcoin community. And powerful meaning by how much impact they can have through the impact of their money. And so I think the Bitcoin community just needs to continue to show up and fight the good fight. And these sort of things are going to go away. And the reason the Democrats and other individuals that don't even necessarily have to be Democrats are playing these stupid games is, in my opinion, they know they're going to lose, but they've got survival on the line, right? They've got their snouts in the money trough in some way. You look at what Karen's just done, and in my opinion, all the Bitcoin ATMs are leaving. There's no way if I'm running a Bitcoin ATM, I'm going to take the risk that I have to give you all your money back plus all the fees in 30 days. Like, that's crazy. She just basically shut down the Bitcoin ATM industry. I mean, I'm saying that as a CEO. God bless you, ATM runners, if you can figure out how to work in that environment. I couldn't off the cuff. So yeah, I think it's just show up, keep fighting the good fight, and support the people and the folks out there that are representing Bitcoin correctly in politics, and we're going to win this game.
That's a great take. No, and again, our movement is just going to continue to get stronger and stronger. Now, I did verify this in the background because I was like, wait a second. I think New Hampshire is like a blue state. They have a Democratic governor. You know, they just made a strategic Bitcoin reserve. No, their governor's Republican. So like, wow. So you have that to me is insane. Like, again, guys, I have to point this out, right? And like, what is going on here? Why is this happening? This is the most important question. Like, why is this happening? Why is this issue political? I think Kent made a really good point, which is money's inherently political. But like, you know, what is happening here? Like, what and why can't we talk about it? What is happening here? Why can't we talk about it? There's clearly a pattern, right? That law that she signed in terms of consumer protection for ATMs, Kent, you know how much that's going to be abused, right? Someone's just going to say, I lost my Bitcoin to fraud. And then, you know, you as the ATM company are liable. So you're essentially, you're going to take a $10,000 loss. They might be lying. There's no way for you to verify that they lied or not, right? How are you going to take the risk, right? That to run an ATM company like that, you know, and then at the same time, shutting down laws that passed the legislative. So they passed the lower chamber and the upper chamber. They went to the governor's desk. The governor had to sign into law. She said, no. I don't care what the lower and higher chambers of Arizona had to say about this. I'm going to veto this. This is not happening on my watch. Then at the same time, in New Hampshire, which I assumed had a Democratic governor, actually has a Republican governor, she signed the bill into law. And then you put in together the Genius Act, which is a stablecoin law. Again, along party lines. The banning of the CBDC bill across party lines. So at what point, us as Simply Bitcoin, can we not bring up the obvious? Because no one else in the industry is effing talking about this. It's all kumbaya, right? But there's an obvious trend here. There's an obvious pattern. It's not monolithic, right? There's Democrats that support Bitcoin. There's Republicans that are against Bitcoin. But by and large, it's this party is for, this party is not, is against. That's the pattern I'm picking up. That's very troubling. I hope that changes because Bitcoin in itself as a technology is neutral. But as Kent said, Bitcoin money is inherently political. Anyways, guys, we're going to get to the culture. We have tons to talk about. We'll be right back in just a second. I want to give a shout out to our partner, HIVE Digital Technology. Why HIVE in 2025? Unstoppable growth. As the first ever public miner, HIVE's position to quadruple their global footprint, making them one of the world's fastest growing miners in 2025. And with elite operations that consistently top the industry in Bitcoin mined per exahash, HIVE's now headquartered in the USA. They're lean and mean, they're green and clean, and they're rewriting the playbook on sustainable Bitcoin mining. You can catch the latest buzz at HIVE Digital Tech or at hivedigitaltech.com. Need liquidity without having to sell your Bitcoin? For more than 6 years now, Ledin has been the trusted choice for Bitcoin-backed lending with transparency, security, and trust at their core. I absolutely love these guys, and I personally not only have an account with them, but also a loan. And some of the key features that I love about Ledin is the fact that there are no monthly payments. You pay at the end of the term. You also have the ability to roll over the loan as well, and you can pay it back whenever you want. Essentially what they do is that they help their clients unlock the liquidity of their BTC, allowing you to hodl while still accessing the wealth of your Bitcoin. They've been battle tested with their focus on transparency, security, and trust.
allowing them to build a proven track record of client success and security, helping tens of thousands of clients harness the value of their digital assets with confidence and peace of mind. Learn more about what your BTC can do for you today. Simply Bitcoin viewers get 0.25% off their first loan by using the link in the video/podcast description. What are you waiting for? Head over to ledin.io today.
All right, everybody, we're here at Saz, and we're going to show you how easy this is. Let's check it out. So you go to sazmining.com. This is Bitcoin mining as a service. So essentially, what it is, I'm going to TLDR it. You want to mine Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin mining these days, incredibly energy intensive, incredibly infrastructure intensive. It's very expensive. This is not the days where you can just plug in, a GPU in your house and mine Bitcoin. Those days are long, long gone. But that sucks though, because it's like, wait, what do you mean that I can't mine Bitcoin? This is why our friends here at Saz are so important, because they figured out this problem and they make it easy. So we're going to begin our mining journey to get some wild sats. Let's check it out. So we're going to click it. Let me do this. Here we go. Oh, return to checkout. There we go. Back here. And we're going to click this, and then we're going to do a rig selection. So they have a variety of different mining rigs that you can choose from. You have the Bitmain S19 XP Hydro. You have the Bitmain S19 XP Hydro. You have the Wetsminer M63S. You have the Wetsminer M63S. Whoever named these just wants to make Nico's life difficult, but you guys get the general gist. They have a different variety of miners that you can choose from, and also, very interesting as well, different data centers. So if you want to mine in Paraguay, they got your back. If you want to mine in Norway, they got your back. And it breaks it down, essentially, what your monthly revenue of wild sats is going to be per rig. And again, if you use promo code simplybitcoin, which I already put in, you will get a discount to essentially for your first Bitcoin miner. So you definitely want to head over to sazmining.com today. And again, use promo code simplybitcoin and you get a discount. And they make mining easy. And we'll go to proceed to rig purchase. And then what I'm going to do, and then you put in your first name, your last name, your email address, and you proceed to payment. You can pay in many different ways. You can pay it using Bitcoin. You could pay using dollars. You can pay using credit card. You could pay using Tether, I believe. So there's a variety of different ways to pay for your rig. And then what I'm going to ask Kent to do is, Kent, could you show the awesome dashboard that people have access to once they've purchased their rig? And by the way, guys, the turnover rate is incredibly quick. It's incredibly fast. Within 48 hours, you make your purchase, you buy your rig, and bam, bing, bang, boom. Within 48 hours, you're up and running. You're mining Bitcoin, and this is what you're going to see on your end. On your end, you're going to see a dashboard, and it's going to show where your miner is, what the hash rate is, the total amount of Bitcoin that you've received, the total amount of Bitcoin that's pending, your hash rate, and whether it's active or not. Again, this makes the whole process of mining incredibly easy. This is why it's called Bitcoin mining as a service. And this is exactly why we recommend it here at Simply Bitcoin. And one of the things also too, guys, that you have to understand is that mining wouldn't be a thing if it wasn't economical. So what do I mean by that? I mean by that is, ideally, the way it's supposed to work, the way that it should work, the way that it works is it only makes sense to mine if you're able to essentially mine Bitcoin for a cheaper rate than if you were able to buy it spot. And that's the selling point. Like, that's the awesome part about mining Bitcoin, is that you're able to acquire Bitcoin at a cheaper rate than if you were to just buy it spot. And I think Kent just pulled something up. What's the daily cost to mine a Bitcoin with Saz? So you, of course, you have your electricity costs and then your wild sats generated. So again, your cost of acquisition is $73,000 per coin compared to $100,000 per coin if you were just to buy it at spot market rate. And that's the selling point. And also another thing too, guys, one of the best things about bull markets is, as someone in the chat, bam, bing, bam, boom, ba, da, ga, da, da, ga. One of the things about bull markets, guys, is that rate doesn't really change that much if the price shoots up. So if the price shoots up to like 150,000 or 200,000 or 300,000, yes, that daily cost to mine, that will go up, but it won't go up drastically like that. So you're getting significantly cheaper Bitcoin by mining it rather than buying it spot. And this is why we recommend Sazmining here at Simply Bitcoin. A great way to get wild sats. And the reason they're called wild sats is quite interesting. It's because they're wild. No one knows where those sats came from. They're wild sats. Isn't that right, Ken?
That's absolutely right. This is the way you acquire Bitcoin, the way Satoshi designed the network, right? And actually, I want to touch on that for a minute. I was at Bitcoin Plus last week, making some inroads with the developer community. The op return debate front and center. You guys are probably participating in that online. I've got my own thoughts on it, quite clear. I'm not going to go into that. But there's a problem in mining right now, and the problem is caused actually by us in the Bitcoin community. And the problem is this: all the centralization issues that are occurring right now in mining, well, they're occurring because the majority of hash rate on the network is there to acquire fiat and using Bitcoin mining as a proxy to get fiat. And that's creating a misalignment of incentive on the network. Well, why is that occurring? Well, it's occurring because we in the Bitcoin community have decided the right way to acquire Bitcoin is by buying it instead of mining it. And, you know, I think we've got a moral obligation as a community to actually go back to the way Satoshi designed the network to acquire our Bitcoin. And by doing so, dominate the network in terms of the intention behind the hash rate being for Bitcoin. Because I promise you, if the majority of us are acquiring our Bitcoin through mining, we're no longer going to be misaligned with the network. We're going to care about what's going on and the way things work. And things like the op return debate that are going on right now, frankly, are downstream of that. That's the core worry that the dev community has right now in Bitcoin is, hey, we're worried about Bitcoin mining centralization. And so this is a way that we're going to fix it is by, you know, adjusting the op return filter. So, you know, regardless of what you think of that, I just want to point out like what we're doing at Sazmining, and I hope others decide to do ultimately is to try to fix this misalignment of incentives by getting more people into mining. And by the way, there's a natural incentive to do so because it's cheaper than going to buy it in an exchange, and it's wild. So what does wild mean? It means it's coming directly from the network. There's no bag tagged surveillance state going on with these sats. These are just going right to your wallet. And what's really interesting is to just see how our clients are choosing to use those sats. I see them being used more freely. And my theory is that in the long run, these are the sats that are going to make up the circular economies that we long talk about, because people feel liberated to actually use them. They're not worried that somebody's looking over their shoulder at how they're using their sats. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of positives to mining as your primary way to acquire sats. But hey, if that's uncomfortable, you know, just split it up in half. Like diversify your acquisition strategy.
100%. And what I will say, guys, is, you know, something that perhaps, I mean, if you've been watching Simply Bitcoin for a while, you guys know a lot. You guys know my story. But if you're new, I actually got into the industry via mining. I didn't do media first. So I got into Bitcoin around 2016. I was mining Bitcoin, Venezuela and Miami for a little bit, South Carolina. And then in 2018, the bear market hit. I packed up shop. Like we couldn't deal with it. One of my biggest regrets is not soldiering it through, because if I would have soldiered it through, oh my God, right? You know, 2019, 2020, 2021, I would have looked like an absolute genius, you know? So the reason I'm telling you this is some of the best times to get into mining is not when the price is going through the roof. It's when the price is going sideways. It's actually when the bear markets, like it's the most painful because you're just like, this is very expensive. I'm barely profitable, or I'm actually like kind of like losing money on the like or whatever. But if you stick around, you make a fortune. You look like a genius. It's, and that's one of the awesome parts about mining. And I hope you guys learn from my own personal experience, right? Because it would have been great if I would have stuck around. I just didn't know back then. Back then, it was a totally different environment. It was a different world, right? But if I had a time machine, I told Nico, I would have been like, dude, I know you're hurting right now. I know you're losing money, but stick around, dude. Stick around. Just tighten up. Soldier through, and it would have worked out. So, mining is incredibly rewarding. What I love about our friends over at Saz is they make the whole learning curve, they make that go away, right? It's a plug-in. It's like the Uber of mining, essentially, right? It's like you plug in you make the purchase, you have a dashboard, boom, you're mining, you're getting that Bitcoin, you're getting those wild sats that's getting sent to your wallet. They make it incredibly easy rather than going through the whole learning curve of plugging in those machines, having to learn about heat management, having to learn about electricity management, having to learn about just machines break down, believe it or not, right? All of that is a pain in the ass, and you lose a ton of money all along the way, just kind of learning, going through that process, right? So this is what these guys do. They make it easy. It's a turnkey solution. This is why we recommend it here at Simply Bitcoin. So if you guys are interested, head over to sazmining.com today and use promo code SimplyBitcoin. You will get a discount on your first rig at Sazmining. And again, once you make your purchase, it's up and running within 48 hours, and it's a great way to buy cheaper Bitcoin. Anyways, if you guys enjoyed today's show, make sure to smash that like button. I do want to give a very special shout out to our guest today. We have the CEO of Sazmining himself. We got Kent in the house joining us. Head over to Sazmining, like I said. But before we wrap up today's show, I do want to give a shout out to our conference sponsor. And of course, I'm talking about Las Vegas. It's coming up, guys, at the end of the month. Bitcoin 2025 just announced the vice president will be making an appearance. Of course, Ross Ulbricht. You have the Trump's two children. You have the Bitcoin Senator Lummis. You have Michael Saylor. You have David Sachs. You have Jack Mallers. This is going to be the largest Bitcoin event in the world. Bitcoin 2025, Las Vegas, Nevada. 30,000 people attending, 400 confirmed speakers, 5,000 attending companies, $14 trillion assets under management are going to be at Bitcoin 2025. The speaker list is absolutely insane. You definitely don't want to miss it. The prices increase in 3 days. Get your tickets now. Get your tickets quickly. Use promo code SIMPLY to get 10% off your tickets to Bitcoin 2025, and we'll see you guys in Vegas. Until then, love you all. We'll see you guys tomorrow for a brand new episode of Simply Bitcoin Live.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.